Decent. But you need to start rocking the denim vest, and then you have to wear it every week when the Bills win the first time you wear it. It can be a Seinfeld thing and a Joe Dirt thing. So you can be doing two at once.
It's true. I would wear it, dude, with the big metal buttons.
Snaps. They're snaps, dude. Call them
They're
what they are.
snaps.
Regular dudes. What stuff?
Welcome to Regular Dudes Watch Stuff. I am Jamie G. Esquire the Fifth, a master of the strike. And I'm here with Magnum Mills to talk about what we've watched recently and to talk about one of our favorite shows, Seinfeld. 'Tis the season, so we're going to do a little holiday classic here, The Strike from season 9. Mills, I hope you know that this show isn't over until you pin me.
I'm Magnum Mills, and A, there's no way he's pinning me. And B, I'm the man who is obligated to mention that Jamie G has a well-known bowling fetish. Why do you think he keeps talking about pins and strikes? And just wait until we get to the airing of grievances. And we hope that you don't have a bone to pick with Regular Dudes Watch Stuff, because we're just here being dudes talking about stuff, mostly stuff we've watched. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. We're on social media at Dudes Watch Stuff. Do not forget to get your holiday shopping in. It is almost here. And don't forget the flaps. Follow, like, and please subscribe. That's all we ask. It helps other people find our show, find our channel. So in the name of some good holiday cheer and whatnot, if you had fun, please give us a thumb. That's all we want to see under the tree.
Well, before we go out for bagels, let's talk about what we filled our holes with recently. Here's our latest edition of Holes in This House. Holes in This House. Mills, what have you been filling your holes with besides snow?
Dude, how could you possibly know that I recently listened to 12 Inches of Snow for the first time in like 30 years? Do you have an informer or something?
Informer.
Yeah, in all seriousness, that was a real album by Snow, white Jamaican Canadian dude, and it was a big hit back in the 90s. That was a thing. What's also a thing is season 3 of the show Slow Horses from Apple TV, starring Gary Oldman. This is a good one based on the book series. I think they're doing at least 4 seasons, all based on the books. It's a good time. It's got that little spy stuff you like, but Gary Oldman playing on the surface like the sloppiest secret agent kind of dude you've ever seen, but he's really smart. It's a good one. You should check it out. I've watched all 4 episodes of the first part of season 2 of Invincible. I'm working my way through those books. Very good. If you haven't seen season 1, only 10 episodes, animated, joint on Amazon Prime. You should check it out. And I've been randomly finally watching The Handmaid's Tale. It's one of those things. I know the final season is coming up. I've been meaning to watch it forever. Good show. I can see why everyone's like, oh, it's a good show, but it is pretty depressing. It's a tough binge. You can really only do 1 or 2 at a time. The good news is there's not that many of them. It's 10 to 13 a season. There's been 5 seasons. So, you got 50, 60 episodes, but definitely very good. John Elizabeth Moss, obviously been killing it since Mad Men and whatnot. Yvonne Strahovski, again, great cast. Just, it's dark, dude, and very relevant and very dark. Jamie G, what have you been filling your holes with besides white Canadian Jamaican rappers?
Informer. Man, shout out. Good one right there.
Yeah, say 3 more. Name me one more line from the song besides "Lick Your Boom Boom Down."
All right, I'm back here. Couple things. One, I finally finished the latest season of The Witcher. It started, they released it 4 episodes and then took a break and then 4 episodes. It started kind of slow, wasn't really a big fan, and then the last 4 episodes that came out were really good. So I really liked it. I like where it ended. It's gonna be interesting to see what they do with the show heading into season 4, but that was fun. Also checked out, recently got to go to see Burt Kreischer live. Really nice stand-up comedy. And then also checked out his movie The Machine. If you haven't watched it, watch it. It's really funny. It's a good movie based on a real story. So that was pretty fun too. So got a little humor, got a little seriousness, been filling the holes. Now, we're obviously big Seinfeld fans, so everything is on the table here. There will possibly be spoilers from every episode of Seinfeld, as well as anything else associated with the show, interviews, etc. If you don't know, well, now you know.
This is The Strike, Season 9, Episode 10, the 166th overall episode of Seinfeld, originally aired December 8th, 1997. Directed by Andy Ackerman, he directed 87 episodes of Seinfeld, including all of the episodes in Season 9. Written by Dan O'Keefe, Alec Berg, and Jeff Shaper. Notable guest appearances include Jerry Stiller as Frank Costanza, Estelle Harris as Estelle Costanza, Bryan Cranston as Tim Whatley, Kevin McDonald as Denham Vest, Daniel Von Bargen as Kruger, and Karen Feynman as Gwen. The short plot synopsis is Jerry goes out with a woman who is beautiful one day and ugly the next. Kramer goes back to work at H&H Bagels. Bryan Cranston as Tim Whatley. Elaine gives a fake number to a man. Makes the gang sound like a lot of good people here, right? Kramer actually sounds like the best of the bunch. He's going back to work. George is making up charities. Elaine's giving out fake numbers. Interesting tease.
It definitely is. And before we dive in, I think we should just start with our overall thoughts on this episode titled The Strike. Obviously, this is a classic, but was it as good as you remembered, Mills?
I would say, yeah, it's probably as good as I remember. It's really fun, but this is one of those when you got towards the end of the run where you got really kind of into that heightened reality and you had to kind of accept that this probably wouldn't happen to regular people. You know, you go to something like the parking garage, the Chinese restaurant, they were very relatable. Here you have the idea that the two-face thing, I guess, could maybe be a little bit real. The fake number thing could definitely be real on some level, especially back in the day when that's the only way you could contact somebody. You couldn't just, oh, here, bump contact info, or here's my Facebook or my Instagram or whatever. It just seems that they took everything as far as they can go, and it gets kind of almost ludicrous or farcical, but in a good way. I am there for it, but I get why some people are like, dude, that's just a little bit much here. And even to the extent that I forgot that this was the Two-Face episode, because that's its own thing, really. I always have that in Festivus as their own things, and that's just how much there is going on here. So it's all very good, but there's a lot of it. This definitely feels like a Seinfeld episode that maybe couldn't have got a whole two-parter out of it. But man, I wish this was a streaming thing where they could have been like, yeah, give us another 3 minutes. Especially to see more Festivus stuff. I really think there's maybe a little bit of meat left on the bone here. How about yourself? Overall thoughts, The Strike?
Really similar. I mean, like you said, it's obviously a classic. I really like how each character, though, has their own thing. And it's each one is almost could be a standalone of an entire episode. That's how good they are, right? I mean, George with the Festivus and with the Human Fund, Jerry with the Two-Face, Elaine with the atomic subs and the fake number, Kramer with the bagels and the strike. They're all good enough to kind of stand on their own, but then they combined them into this one kind of super thing. And I just think that the writing was fantastic here to be able to blend them all together as the episode went on, and then of course the pinnacle at the table there at Festivus. So for me, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed kind of a lot of the stuff. Yes, it would have been nice. I do think this could have been a longer episode or even a two-parter. But for me, I thought it was just brilliant in terms of all the different storylines going on with all of our four mains, and each one could stand on its own. So when you combine all that, for me, that's usually a winner, and this one certainly was.
If you had to give one of these plot lines its own episode, which one would it be? Would it be the fake number, the charity, Kramer, Festivus, or the Two-Face? You have 5 real plots going on. Which one, if you could focus a whole episode on one of them, what would it be?
I gotta see the Festivus, just because to me that's just so funny, and I like that you get the side characters with George's parents. So to me that's kind of a big win. I would rather have George's parents as the side characters rather than Whatley or Kruger. And don't get me wrong, Kruger's great, or Jerry's girlfriend, or the guy in the bagel shop. So give me Festivus.
That's the obvious answer. I would say that I would have just have loved to got a whole episode of kind of Kramer at work. Maybe we get some flashbacks to when he originally worked there and now, just because we've never really seen him in that environment before. Or maybe you get some kind of thing like they had with the trial at the end, where Elaine has to meet all of the different guys she's given the fake phone number to over the years. I
Yeah.
think there's a way you could have gone with either of those two that would have been interesting and kind of different than your usual Seinfeld formula. Other shows they'll give, oh, it's a J character episode or whatever. It's all just basically one character. Seinfeld never really did that. That was part of the thing with the ensemble. But I think there would be some interesting grounded tread there. But yeah, for traditional style, just actual Festivus itself, I would have been cool if the entire episode was, a double episode of just Festivus for the rest of us.
Yeah, I'm there for it. I mean, we could have at least gotten 5 to 7 minutes at the actual Festivus event. That would have been great.
Well, sometimes you can't do anything about it, man. You're at your neighbor's house, you're just chilling on his couch reading a VCR manual with a cordless phone in your pocket, and you get the call. And that's it. The strike's over, and you got to go to work. And in this case, that means I have to go to work on the recap for the episode. We open the episode with Jerry, George, and Elaine at Tim Watley's Hanukkah party. Jerry meets a woman named Gwen, while Elaine gives a fake number to a guy in a denim vest. I just wanted to stop right here just to ask you real quick, any experience with fake phone numbers? Did you ever used to give out a fake phone number, or have you been on the other end of a fake phone number? Someone's given one to you.
I have not been on the other end of it. I've given out fake phone numbers and fake email addresses. A while ago, I was looking at going to a lot of open houses and stuff, and I was just like, man, I don't want every realtor in the world having my number, especially if I'm not serious about this particular house. I don't want to work with it, whatever. So I would leave, I would leave a fake number and a fake email. That's for sure.
I will say I have been on the other end of it. Both I'm certainly back when I was younger in ways I can't remember. But to this day, somebody is currently using my number, which I have had for 20 years. I've had this number for a long time. And
It's true.
they've used it at
Longer than
PetSmart
20.
because there's another name under my phone number at PetSmart. And then I will randomly now get taxes from usually from charities, political stuff or whatever. And so somebody is using my number to sign up for this stuff because they don't want to get it, because I don't want any of the nonsense that I'm getting. So whoever you are, stop doing that. I'd like to charitably say that it's an accident. I'm just one number off from you or something like that. But it's been a while. And if you steal my PetSmart reward points, I will be mad, and my dog will be mad. So don't do that. Bryan Cranston this way, I'm just so not used to that. You Malcolm or Breaking Bad or whatever. This is just a whole, like, he's unbuttoned with the chest hair out. He's chasing the chesty lady around. It's I don't know, man. I think he's on fire here, even though it's real short as far as his appearance.
He absolutely is. You forget about him. And then, I love that he's Elaine's line, and it's classic. It's like Studio 54 with the menorah in here. And she's so right. It really is. And I love that they brought it back around too, because there was, previous episode where Jerry was quite annoyed about Watley cracking the Jewish jokes because he converted to Judaism, and so he thought he was entitled to make all the Jewish jokes, and it really bothered Jerry. So I like that they brought that back here.
Nice little bit of continuity there, and he was being a little bit extra creepy with the mistletoe. With the
Yes.
ladies and everything like that. Good stuff though. And you actually do see him in a later scene with the one woman, so I guess it went okay. And when Jerry goes to pick up Gwen or whatever, I like the bit where he's just like, "Oh, I'm Jerry and I can run fast," and that's a thing we've seen before with the race and everything. And he is obsessed with kind of being fast. We saw that in was it the marine biologist, where he talks to Testikov about how fast he can run away, and that's why he wears sneakers and everything. So just a fun little bit keeping that up there. And shout out Denim Vest, who I believe is wearing a denim vest over a long sleeve denim shirt with jeans. It was hard to see the jeans, but I think you can kind of see a little bit in one shot. After the commercial break, we fast forward to Monk's, where George joins Jerry for lunch. Jerry comments that everything went great with Gwen. They're going out again today. George opens his mail and gets a card from Tim Watley, who made a donation in his name as a gift. This infuriates George. Elaine shows up and brags that she's about to get a free sub because she's bought 23 so far. George gets a Festivus card from his father, and Jerry explains to Elaine that Frank Costanza started his own holiday. Elaine loves it, and it frustrates George enough that he heads to work, even though he called in sick. How are you with the rewards programs, man? I know people who are crazy for this. My parents are very big on the Marriott points. It's all about the points. Is this something you're into? Are you kind of just there if it works out, or do you really, are you kind of obsessive about this? Remember when everyone was into couponing and stuff like that? I feel like you
Oh
go a
yeah.
little bit like that with the rewards programs.
I like cash rewards. I certainly know people who are very obsessive about their mileage rewards and their things that they want to because I think it makes people feel like they're winning the deal here on buying something as a consumer. I'm a fan of cash back and cash rewards. If I'm going to pay for something, it makes me feel good to get a little bit of points back on it. But you got to make sure that you pay your credit card off every month, so you're not actually letting them win with the interest. just getting a deduction, a small, tiny, paper thin deduction of how much interest they're paying. And that's my financial lesson of the day for you.
What would be the modern day equivalent of opening your mail in a public cafe like George is doing? Would that be just listening to your voicemail and speakerphone? I'm trying to figure out what would be, because everyone couldn't really read his mail, but you could kind of probably see what was going on if you really cared to check it out or find it in the trash or whatever. What would be the modern equivalent of that? Is this guy's like writing scripts at Starbucks or something? What is it?
Yeah, I think so. It's probably that. It's probably a, auto read of email or something, or voicemail, something like that. That sounds about, that tracks. Or you print your stuff in a public space and it sits on the printer. That's pretty close too.
I mean, is this like are you bringing your own printer to Starbucks or something? That'd be pretty great if you have a table and you like literally set up your entire setup, printer included. Just want to point out George's rage in getting the donation gift. I mean, I kind of get it. You love the idea that George's like, I got him Yankee tickets, and he got a piece of paper saying I've given your gift to somebody else. But I mean, that just feels like quintessential George. He can't take the high part of it at
Yes.
all. And Jerry's just like, yeah, dude, don't give me anything this year.
Yeah, the nice little exchange there, and hilarious for George. Obviously he thinks that this is just completely wrong, and that's, well, at least it's going to children. He thinks that's so horrible and so wrong. I just gotta love George, man. He's hot throughout this whole episode.
Love that he's still in good with the grounds crew over at Yankee Stadium. And dude,
Yeah,
I would like to work for a company. I don't really care what it's called here. It's Kruger Industrial Smoothing. But if your motto is we don't care and it shows, I am there. You probably don't care about your workers either, but
George lucks out into some jobs, man. He really does. He lucks out into some pretty sweet gigs over the years.
yeah, we'll get into Mr. Kruger here in a minute, but he is especially on fire, I believe. After that, Jerry and Elaine go back to Jerry's apartment where they find Kramer reading the manual to Jerry's VCR. Elaine can't find her card for the free sub, and she realizes that she wrote her fake number on it and gave it to Denim Vest. She decides to call her fake number and try to track him down. Kramer gets a call on his cordless phone and announces that it's over. He's going back to work. Apparently, he's been on strike for 12 years. It's been long enough that the minimum wage has risen high enough to meet the demands of the workers. Kramer heads back to work at H&H Bagels. What's the funnier part here? That Kramer thought he was on strike for 12 years for this little raise, or that he was embarrassed to tell Jerry about it because he didn't want Jerry to think that he was out of work?
Dude, it is. I don't know how to pick a bigger winner here. I mean, these are both just pure golden Kramerisms, really. I don't know what's the bigger one, but it's both of them are epically hilarious.
Just the amount of times you've seen Kramer go into Jerry's apartment without knocking, just take something out of his fridge or his cabinet and just leave and just help himself. And that he's no shame about that at all. But he was
None.
embarrassed to bring up the strike thing.
Oh, dude, he had to have Jerry teach him how to shower at one point, remember? I mean, there's been a lot where there hasn't been a lot of shame involved, but it is embarrassing to be out of work. I mean, I get it, but
It's odd that Kramer would that's the only thing I can ever think about him being embarrassed about ever. The dude he just doesn't have embarrassment in him. It's just not something he possesses.
he wasn't embarrassed, but he was afraid of his addiction to the fried chicken joint.
A little, and I mean, I guess that you can say that with the betting too, when he gets pulled
Yes.
into the betting, all good things. And you're the, economic guy a little bit here. Is Elaine's, her obsession with getting this free sub because she's already bought all these subs? Is that a perfect example of the sunk cost fallacy? She's going to go through all this just because she went through all this with the previous subs. And she even comments they're bad. 23.
Yes.
Doesn't that seem like maybe 10? 24 seems a lot of subs you don't enjoy. It's a sub too. We're not talking about a bowl of soup. You got to eat it. That's some work.
Yeah. 23 subs to get one free is a colossal feat. I mean, I get why
I'm just saying it's a shitty reward program. It's a shitty reward.
It's a terrible
program.
reward program, but this is all pride for her. All pride. She's earned that free sub. She's already lost money on this thing. It's not a financial thing. This is purely in her mind pride. She has to get that free sub because she went through the gates of hell eating 23 crappy subs to get this free sub. You got to do it. You come that far. I mean, I can understand. I actually buy that. You go that far, dude, you want to see it to fruition. It's going to disappoint, but you at least are going to have to see it to fruition. You just have to.
Yeah, it's, how many pots in poker have you lost because of that mindset? That is the literal definition
Maybe
of the sunk
maybe a
cost
few. I
fallacy.
don't know. I mean, maybe a few. Yeah.
Yeah, but what is cool is just the old school idea that Kramer's in Jerry's apartment and he has his cordless phone with him, which the base of it is in his apartment. If you're young enough, you might not actually understand a cordless phone. It's like a cell phone, but it was tethered to your house. Basically, you can only go a little bit from your house. But having him answer his own phone at Jerry's apartment while reading the VCR manual, that is just classic. The only thing I can think of that compared to that is the scene from Kingpin, where Roy's friend pretends to rob the landlady and then wants to come back to his apartment to poop.
I gotta take a dump.
But I don't have a paper.
I got a crap. I need something to read.
Here, use this shampoo.
New and improved. I read this already. You got it.
That's how you wind up reading a VCR manual.
You know, putting it back on Jerry when Jerry's like, "Are you reading the VCR manual?" And Kramer's like, "Well, we all can't be reading the classics there, Professor Highbrow." Just classic Kramer here, dude. You just gotta love it. You know, you would be annoyed. It would be horrible, but all of us kind of wish deep down inside we had a neighbor like Kramer, don't we? I mean, come on.
Yeah, if you ever get bored or anything, which is again tougher to do nowadays with all the various options we have, way easier to get bored back in the day. And just shout out Atomic Subs, just great name. I wonder how many alts they went for that, but I kind of want an Atomic Sub. It just sounds interesting.
Yeah. Well, but we still don't know if with that free sub came the captain's hat or not. We don't know, but you know, I'm wearing it for Elaine. You know, Laney, this one's for you.
I don't like that. I know we've seen her in the Orioles hat. There's probably been a couple of other hats in the way. I don't know if we ever got her in a captain's hat. Captain's hat, maybe with her smoking the cigar would be a good one. At H&H Bagels, Kramer discovers that he's the only worker to return after the strike. Most of those other guys got jobs like 10 years ago. Elaine goes to the location of her fake number, which is an off-track betting spot. The counter guys comment that they've been getting her calls for 5 years. They offer to tell her when Denim Vest guy calls. They just need her real number. To avoid giving these guys her number, Elaine gives them the number for H&H Bagels because she had Kramer's card in her purse. While waiting for Gwen at a restaurant, Jerry bumps into Tim Watley and his date, also from the party. Gwen shows up, and Jerry barely seems to recognize
Bryan
him.
Cranston as Tim Watley.
Like Michaela
Bryan
Maroney
Cranston as Tim
is not
Watley.
impressed. Did you get this the first time you saw it? Like, I didn't quite get obviously you understand
Watley.
the Two-Face thing pretty quickly after this, but
Tim
I recognized
Watley.
pretty clearly
Tim
it was
Watley.
the same actress. And I
Bryan
was like,
Cranston as Tim
okay,
Watley.
I didn't
Bryan
really
Cranston
get
as
it.
Tim Watley.
Apparently at one point they were actually going to cast two separate actresses who just looked a little bit alike. That way it was just more dramatic when you would cut between them. I like that they didn't do that. I think that probably would have been a bit too jarring, but they really struggled to make this lady, you know, because she was a pretty good looking lady one way or the other. I don't know. That part of it didn't quite work for me. There were a couple shots where it maybe worked with just the contrast between the two, but overall, I wish they, you know, nowadays it'd probably be digital or something, right? They'd find a way to do the Two-Face thing a little better.
Yeah, I mean, this is with no CGI. This is with no modern day technology. I mean, I think that it worked on the shots where her hair was just slightly different and the light was dim, and also just the speed in which they showed her. You only got a split second, you know, on and off, so you didn't really get a chance to really like analyze it. I kind of got the gist of what they were doing early on for me, and then obviously it carried out through the episode. But I think when it worked, it was with, okay, let's change the lighting, make it darker. Let's just do something really quickly with her hair. We're going to show her for like 0.01 seconds and come back. And that's when it worked. The longer, more drawn out scenes where nothing changed with the lighting, it was just kind of like, you know, is it that significant? You know, I think it took away a little bit from the humor that they were trying to get out of this.
Yeah, I think the first time was probably the worst because that was the longest we went between seeing her. Usually it'd be one and then they go to the good light, whether it's in the car and then they go into the tunnel or a month and they go to the other booth. Here you only had her at the party and then you got this scene at the restaurant where it was dark or what have you. So I just don't think it stuck out enough there. Elaine gets a lot of good stuff here. Just the way all these guys at the counter are kind of leering at her, and then she figures out what's going on and then decides not to give them the fake number, but then decide to drop a sawbuck on the race or whatever. I like
Yeah.
that it showed a side of Elaine, like we see with her smoking the cigar. Like she's done some stuff. I would be curious about a little spin-off about Elaine, what she does when she's not with these guys. We've gotten little taste of that before, but I would have loved to see when Elaine got into, obviously for horse racing for a while, or at least dated somebody who was really into it.
Well, we also don't forget about how hardcore Elaine's father is, Mr. Bennis. He's a hardcore cat, and you got to think a little bit of that rubbed off on her.
Yeah, I would say that. And just Kramer is so great. Everything with him and the guy at HH is awesome. But when he brings Kramer back, when Kramer's just, all right, cool, let's bagel, he takes off his jacket, balls it up, and sticks it in the front case where all the bagels they are selling. Just that is the most Kramer thing I can think of. And the owner just kind of just gives him like just a little bit of a glance. And it's in there he keeps doing that because you see him take it out of there when he goes on strike later. So I guess no one stops him.
He said, and he does it with such comfort and familiarity too. It's like, is that where he kept his jacket all these years? But I just love like you go in there and you get the feeling that it's like, oh man, there was a big strike. This is a big deal. And the guy's completely forgotten about it. He's like, oh yeah. And then Kramer's looking for the rest of them. And I imagine they all just got jobs. It's just so funny that the loyalty there
Right, like 2 weeks after
hung out for 12 years.
I mean, was the bagel place that good of a job? Maybe you got full health insurance and a parking spot or something. I mean, perhaps at one point in time it was, but yeah, that entire bit worked great, and basically everything at the bagel spot is gold in the entire episode. Gold,
yeah.
Jamie, gold.
And it stays gold throughout the entire episode. Honestly, let's be real.
It just shot out Elaine using her same fake number over because it was a no Elaine, and the extra E is for yeah, so good. Back at Jerry's apartment, Jerry explains the situation with Gwen to George, and he says that she's a two-face. George then shows Jerry what he's giving everyone for the holidays, a donation to the Human Fund, a charity that he made up. Kramer comes in with day-old bagels, and George gets up to leave. Jerry wishes him a happy Festivus, and he begins explaining Festivus to Kramer. Elaine enters as George is leaving, and she also hits him with a happy Festivus. Kramer is very impressed that Frank created a holiday. He's so prolific. Elaine explains the denim vest situation to Kramer and tells him to take a message if anybody calls H&H looking for her.
Let's just start with the brilliance of the Human Fund. And not only that, the slogan, money for people. It's so ridiculous. It almost works.
It's right there with Hungry for Apples. I'll give it that.
It's like the perfect George gift. And, it's so believable that George would do something like this, and it would make him so happy inside to do it. And, we'll get to the scene a little bit later when he's on cloud 9 at the office, flinging him around and making it rain. I mean, he's in all his joy. So I love this for him.
In classic George, he doesn't want to think too hard. What was it? The Children's Alliance? So he's like, all right, what can I come up with that's more general and more vague than the Children's Alliance? The Human Fund.
Human Fund. Money for people. It just.
Where do you land on donations as gifts in general?
Where I think it's acceptable is when, people have made it, for example, I went to a wedding earlier this year and they asked for donations for their wedding gift. That's awesome, right? Wealthy couple, don't really need money or anything, but they wanted to, use it as an opportunity to raise money for some of their favorite charities. That's something really cool. But just to like generally, get some, to me, I'd rather just give a bottle of wine. But if people like it, you got to feel them out, right? Because I don't know how they'll take it. I don't know. I guess I'm 50-50 on it, man. I think there's a time and a place. But I think you have to know your audience here too, a little bit.
Yeah, it totally depends. If that's something you've agreed on ahead of time, like we're all like, instead of exchanging gifts, we'll each donate something in each other's name or whatever, and you know well enough to do it, because people might not necessarily want to be tied to something. I can see some people abusing that and trying to get people to donate, necessarily to things they might not believe in it and what have you. And I do think it is cheap if a business does that, because they're probably going to use this as the write-off ultimately, and they are just working you. So it is basically, instead of giving you a gift, we're using you as a tax write-off.
Yes.
Human Fun, though, very cool. That's a definitely a t-shirt I would rock. And how about Festivus? in general, it was based on one of the writers. His father created a fake holiday like this, and it's become a real thing. Have you ever actually been to a Festivus party or know of someone who's thrown a Festivus party?
I do know of people who have thrown the Festivus parties. I unfortunately did not haven't attended one yet. I hope I get to. It's a bucket list thing. Got to have the poll. Got to air the grievances. I definitely know about people having Festivus parties. I just, unfortunately, your boy hasn't been to one yet.
For years, one of my buddies had his name was Frank, and he had a Frank Runes Christmas Eve, and it was always on the 23rd, which is Festivus Day. So looking back, I'm like, damn, dude, all we had to do was have a poll, and we had Festivus basically. We had all the other trimmings and whatnot. Although, are you allowed to have a Christmas tree at Festivus? I mean, it technically probably goes against the spirit of it a little bit, but it's easier to just take up an aluminum pole and take it down than it is to not put up a Christmas tree or wait until December 24th, to wait until Christmas Eve or what have you. It just finally, the day old donuts I thought was pretty great. Just the idea that first Kramer comes in with donuts, first time ever he showed up with something for everybody, right? Basically. And Jerry and George start to go into him, and Kramer talks about having his dough his hands in the dough all day. And then they're like, ooh, I don't know if I want to eat these. And it's like, no, no, not that dough. Then they're in again. And he's like, no, those are day olds. The homeless won't even touch them. And maybe a nice little callback to the muffin bottoms, remember? Where they just had the muffin tops. Elaine would try to donate the muffin bottoms, and even the homeless didn't want them. It felt like they were definitely doing a little callback there.
My favorite part of that, though, is not just the because Kramer's doing a normal Kramer thing, going in, digging around in the fridge, finding stuff. But one of my favorite parts about that is when he's like, the homeless won't even touch him. And then when he gives the example, when he's like, we try to fool them with putting some fresh ones on top, but they dig, they check. Classic gold Kramer right there. So funny, dude. Yeah, gotta love that. Gotta love that.
Yeah, everything is really on fire here. Back at H&H, Frank Costanza arrives because he was invited by Kramer to explain Festivus. Frank explains how Festivus came to be, and Kramer seems very, very intrigued. At Kruger, George hands out human fun presents to everybody, including Mr. Kruger. Back at H&H, Kramer has rekindled Frank's love for Festivus, and he vows to celebrate it once again. Frank leaves as Elaine enters. Kramer asks for the 23rd off so that he can celebrate Festivus. When he's denied that, Kramer goes back on strike. Elaine is now forced to wait at H&H for the call from Den Invest by herself. Any thoughts on the introduction of Festivus? I can't really remember the first time I watched this. It was a long time ago. It was legitimately back in the 90s, so I don't remember what I was expecting of Festivus, but this wasn't it. The whole story with the doll and the idea of course, George having the doll is hysterical in itself, but then you get the idea at the end. Maybe Frank was into the doll a little bit too. There's some weird undertones going on here, certainly.
First of all, just shout out to Jerry Stiller and as Frank Costanza here. I mean, as I rain down blows upon his chest, his storytelling is just at another level. And his explanation of how Festivus was born, it might not have been exactly how I remembered, but I really enjoyed it through his flashback storytelling, because I think that was a secret power of this show, was with some of their side characters. And dude, Frank Costanza's up there in terms of all-time great side characters for Seinfeld. He's got to be pretty high on that list, and this is a reason why.
Yeah, you don't stop short on Frank Costanza. I mean,
He never stops short.
Really. I mean, that's his move, so you can't steal his move from him. Everything there is great and just about perfect, right down to the fact that he just hates Christmas. He's like, I find tinsel distracting. To be honest with you, I do too. Not really a huge fan of the tinsel, especially if you own an animal. The tinsel does not work out well, but don't sell short like everything with George at Kruger. He's so happy for people. He's getting wine and cigars and giving them the human fun whatnot. And then the exchange with Kruger is just perfect.
What is this?
The Human Fund.
Whatever.
Exactly.
George is just so pleased with himself, right? This is almost the most pleased you ever see George with himself in the entire run of the show. He is just so proud of himself for the Human Fund.
Rightfully so, dude. I mean, this is one of the best. This is one of the all-time Costanza things, man. I mean, this is way up there for him in terms of what he's accomplished, and it's hilarious to me as he's just flinging it around. He's throughout the whole episode too. He kind of they kind of make it a little bit of a runner here. All the great gifts he gets for the office Christmas exchange, and then to know he just gave a fake donation. It's just classic George.
Burger Industrial Smoothing sounds like fun based on the gifts everyone else was giving. I will say that.
Yes.
I would like to at least
Yes.
attend their holiday Christmas party.
The only thing we were missing was, Frank Reynolds coming out of the couch, dude. That would have just put this to another sphere.
Yeah, I don't know if we could get there. And just shout out when at the very end of the H&H scene, when Kramer's leaving and Elaine's staying, and Kramer just starts shouting "scab" at her.
Yeah. I tell you, dude, I think Kramer possibly could have been an amazing picketer, striker, union buster, whatever you want to call it. I think he was skilled at this thing.
You can see him holding up some funny signs, so that to say
He's
the
got
least.
his thermos, like he's prepared, man. Like it's not his first rodeo here.
That's funny. It's just now, just in my brain, I'm like, if this was happening now, he would totally have a Yeti thermos or something. Yeah, the classic
He would
one
have
back in
to.
the day. I was just picturing like the uppy thermos he would have now. Of course he would, because it would be and it would be Jerry's ultimately that he stole from.
Yeah,
Jerry.
he took it from Jerry, of course.
Of course he did. Jerry goes on a date with Gwen, and he continues to experience the Two-Face phenomenon. The next day at Monk's, he talks about it with George. Since she always looks good in the back booth there, George suggests just bringing her here. Jerry figures, why not? He'll give it a shot. Kramer and Frank walk in, and Frank has the Festivus pole with him. They invite George and Jerry to Festivus, but George runs out when Frank plays an audio tape of a previous Festivus. Gwen arrives, and Jerry introduces her to Frank and Kramer before quickly escorting her to the back booth. How many times would someone have to take you to the same place and sit in the same spot before you got weirded out? 3, 5, 10? How much tolerance would you have?
I think probably the second. I'll probably be like, oh.
Say you're going to Steve's Prince of Steaks and there's only 10 seats. There are scenarios where it can be.
There are
reasonable.
scenarios where, but for just a run of the mill Monk's coffee shop, like, yeah, in the same booth, it's not even going to the same place, the same spot.
And it's in the back too. That makes you feel like you're hiding a little bit or something like that.
Absolutely, it does. Great setup here for when it delivers later on this episode with Kramer, for sure.
And what was funnier, just Frank dragging that pole in or playing the audio cassette for George?
It's got to be the auto cassette, but the sound of the pole, the
Pole
aluminum pole dragging was just legendary. But the audio cassette and the way it stopped and started and stopped and started, just one of the funniest moments of the episode for me, honestly. Just hilarious.
It's, you obviously have, nowadays again, they would probably do a little bit of digital effects to this, but you can tell it's just Jason Alexander trying to do a young George voice or whatever. And it does pay off with, he says almost the same thing at the very end of the episode. So yeah, it's tough to beat that. And shout out Frank with being ready. He had the receipts, that's what you call that these days. Like, yeah, he brought the receipts to the Monks with him, the poll and the receipts. And it's part of George's heritage and he knows it. And that's why he hates it.
And that's why he hates it.
One more gift George got, cufflinks. And since he doesn't own a French cuff shirt, he just went ahead, cut the button, and took a pair of scissors. And yes, that's technically, but the French cuff actually folds over. But all right, we're not gonna do a whole thing. But that's really not a French cuff.
But I love this though, because he wanted so badly to show off his cufflinks, and instead of buying a shirt that would fit on, no. George Costanza made his own, and it worked. That nice little runner here with them showing the gifts throughout.
Too bad he's not the same size as Kramer. I bet you Kramer has 30 French cuff shirts he never wears for some reason, but none of them would fit George.
Doesn't it seem like he does?
Kramer's
Kramer's
just
style,
got him.
man. He's a good
Bob
dressed guy.
Sacamano gave him to him one time or something like that.
Either him or Lomez, one of the two.
Yeah, well, that's how those guys roll. Speaking of Kramer is striking in front of H&H while Elaine waits inside. The phone rings and Elaine answers. It's Kramer, who warns her that she should get out of there because he sabotaged the bagel machine. Unfortunately for him, sabotaging the steam valve just makes it a bit steamy inside the restaurant. Back at Kruger, George gets a check from Mr. Kruger for $20,000 that he's supposed to donate to the Human Fund. Yeah, why not? He just had to pick something. All right, dude, how about letting off the steam? This did not work as well for Kramer as it did for John Matrix and Commando, did it?
It did not, but dude, here's what's hilarious though, because when he calls to Warner, you worry that it's, like, oh my God, is it going to blow up? What's going to happen? But then when you see what it is, and then he comes and he bangs on the window.
Even when he's on the phone, you
Ah,
see him waving. It's the payphone that's right there that we saw in the establishing shot earlier, and he's just waving to Elaine. He's still
so good, man. How you like your bagels now? I mean, just absolutely hilarious.
yeah, just the whole
I love
exchange. Like, can
this.
we still make bagels? Sure, it'll just be a little steamy, but that sets up the idea of Elaine becoming the Two-Faced. And just the whole bit, she's still waiting there, and she's just desperate. And the owner's like, "You want a sandwich? I'll just make you a sandwich." Dude, if someone offers you a free sandwich, you say yes.
She wants the sandwich she earned, man.
But you can eat that sandwich later. You can still
I
eat the free
agree.
sandwich now. You never turn down a free sandwich. I mean, there's basically no such thing as a free lunch. It's like if someone asks you a God, you say yes. If someone asks you if you want a free sandwich, you say yes. Worst case scenario, you give it to someone else, they'll eat it. And just one little Kruger bit after he gives George the check, it's in the hallway or whatever, and he tries to go back to his office and he locked himself out, not for the first time. So he just goes home. You
I'm
think I
going
feel like
home.
him and George are soulmates a little bit because that's
Dude,
exactly what George would do, I think.
yes. If fast forward 20 years, George will like find himself in a leadership position like that, and that's going to be George. Like George will get so burned down on life, just not care anymore, and that's going to be George.
He's not George of the Jungle, but he's as strong as he can be. But sometimes he just forgets to watch out for that tree.
Georgie boy.
Next, Gwen is sick of eating at Monk's with Jerry's, and she leaves when George arrives. George shows Jerry the check from Kruger and vows to start his own charity. Kramer is once again striking in front of H&H when Elaine comes out. Dad and Bess finally called, and she's about to get her atomic subcard back. Unfortunately, she's not looking her best due to all the steam. Elaine leaves and Gwen shows up, but Kramer doesn't recognize her. He tells her that she's way better looking than Jerry's current girlfriend and a foot taller. Gwen thinks that's why Jerry keeps bringing her to the back booth of the coffee shop. Same kind of thing I mentioned here earlier. Did they do a good enough job with Elaine to make you feel like Denim Guy would actually be like, no, I'm not. Because I thought Elaine looked pretty good still.
I mean, her hair was wet. I think they probably should have did a little bit more with the running makeup. I think that could have maybe got it there because basically it was just wet hair,
She was doing
and
like
they
a late
tried to,
90s. That was the look. Like 2 years later, that was
yes,
the look. So
right.
what looking back at it now, I'm like, so what? That's she's doing a little golf thing or something, or a little emo
The
or
only thing I
whatever
think
it's
of is
still.
maybe she smelled. Maybe we probably
The
needed
hair, I
Kramer to
think,
come
was
in.
probably what they were really going for. And like you said, maybe the mascara running and everything would have helped a little
Well,
bit.
yeah, they missed on the makeup running. That's the one swing and a miss that they had in this thing was that would have made her look more scary. They could have literally made her look like the girl from The Ring or something. I mean, they could have maybe not that extreme, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, maybe ever eaten onion bagels or something. So then she had some bad breath or something going on too. Maybe add a little something onto it to.
Well, and dude, for anybody who's ever been in a steam room, you sweat. So I mean, she's sweating, probably smelling like, I don't know, yeast and bagels and onion and so she probably didn't smell good. So yeah, I guess there's a universe where I could get there, but Denim Guy is not in a position to be putting down any version of Elaine, steam room Elaine or not.
Just a little bit that's great is the way that Jerry and George both let it just roll over them when there's a rubber band in the soup.
Oh
I
my
guess
God.
Paco's cooking
Paco's
it.
working. The way George flings it, Paco, and just
Obviously
flings.
not their first rodeo.
Well, and it's a great setup too, because the girl, because Gwen's like, there's a rubber band in my soup, which to any rational human would extremely disgust you. And you would, and I find it so funny because George would look at that as an opportunity to like get free soup for life or something. But in this case, he just accepts it and laughs and knows that Paco's working. Just very funny bit of writing here for me.
Well, and especially for Gwen, right? Because she's in her head has to be, this is the restaurant he has to bring me to every day? The rubber band in the soup place?
Yeah,
It
it's pretty
definitely makes
bad.
it feel even more like he's hiding something or what have you. So that works out well from that aspect. And I would say when George basically says what he would do with his charity. That's about the most honest we've ever heard George Costanza in the history of the show. Where, he would have all this money and people would love him and they come and they beg to him and he would help them out if he liked them, and then they would owe him big time.
Is that not all George ever wants? Wouldn't he feel like he's made it in life if that was his situation? Like where he could just, if that was his reality, that's got to be the highest dream George Costanza's ever had, right? I mean, it's got to be just that
I
scenario.
don't think he can even dream higher than that.
I don't
Maybe
think he
making
could.
trades with the Yankees when he was like one step below being involved with trades. That's about it.
That's about it.
Maybe George is in charge of the Yankees now. I'm not even 100% sure.
Well, he's probably working for the Mets.
He probably is, but yeah, what else are you gonna do? You can just otherwise be outside, be like, no bagel, no bagel, no bagel, no bagel, no bagel. If you want to, it feels like a baseball chant right there. Elaine meets up with Denim Jacket, who doesn't recognize her due to the effect of the steam. He says that he has the card back in his place, but he can't take her there now. Instead, he gives her his phone number and takes off. Elaine quickly realizes that he copied the number off of a nearby truck. Back at Kruger, Mr. Kruger tells George that the accounting department says that the human fund doesn't exist. George gives the check back, but Mr. Kruger is pissed about the fake Christmas presents. George tells him that he did all of this because he wanted to avoid persecution because he celebrates an alternate holiday, Festivus. Mr. Kruger is skeptical, so George offers him proof, and Kruger thinks that he's probably going to need to see that. Dude, all things considered, Kruger kind of rolls with the punches here, right? He gave 20K. I mean, I know he gave 20K almost on a lark, but man, he takes this well.
He does, but this scene here is, we'll talk about it a little bit more because this may or may not be in one of our awards, but I just love his response to George and the fact that he now all of a sudden we haven't seen him be interested in a whole lot of anything. And all of a sudden he's interested in whatever Festivus is and whatever Costanza comes from. And you can't blame him. Would that not pique your interest as well?
It honestly felt like Kruger just didn't have anything else to do.
Nothing better to do.
He locked himself out of his office again or something. I wish maybe we had a little more background on him, and I think that's probably because he was just supposed to be a one-off back in like the Slicer, and then they decided to keep him around, so he wound up showing him up in like 4 episodes. So they didn't have a lot for him, but you get the idea. Maybe his dad is like the real Mr. Kruger who owns the joint, so he's just coasting or something, so he really doesn't care. That probably makes the most sense, and maybe makes it just a little bit funnier here. Or even like, yeah, you probably should, just because he's gonna have to explain it to his dad. Or something like that, and both of them kill, especially in this old scene when Jason Alexander's trying to figure out how he's going to do it. He does like the head scratch. It's just, you could just see the wheels turning in George's head. It's just phenomenal acting, even though they've been doing this for so long. It's so good still.
Yeah. Oh man, it hits every time, and I just love that he got caught in this lie too. It's just so, again, such a great plot line of this episode where there's 4 or 5 real killer things going on here. This is a great one, and the fact that he gets caught in it makes it even better, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, it's a perfect setup for what comes next, and that's George arriving at his parents' house with Mr. Kruger in tow. Right behind them, Jerry and Elaine arrive, and not long after that, Kramer arrives with the guys from the off-track betting place who called H&H after Elaine gave them the fake number. Everybody sits down to dinner, and the airing of grievances begins. Shortly after that, Gwen bursts in and mistakenly identifies Elaine as Jerry's ugly girlfriend, again, because of the steam thing. Gwen leaves, and she's followed by Kramer. He caved on the strike because he really had to use the bathroom. This leaves George to perform the feats of strength. Festivus won't end until George pins Frank. And Jamie G, stop crying and fight your father.
This is just unbelievable. I could have just had this be the entire episode, honestly. Just a dinner at George's house with company, George's parents' house, rather, with company, could be an episode in and of itself. You make it Festivus, where Frank is in control and leading this thing. Yeah, dude, I'm all in for this. Hilarious. One of my favorite parts, though, is that all storylines seem to come together here, with the guys from the off-track betting and Kruger and then Gwen, and just everything kind of blending together at this precipice, this boiling point. The Festivus at Frank Costanza's house. I love this. I think this is the pinnacle of the episode.
And even just the little small thing where Kruger calls Kramer Dr. Van Ostrand, that's from the previous episode where Kramer pretended to be the doctor and examined him and everything. Again, Kruger just kind of rolls with the punches when the doctor dude just like, yeah, I have to go back to work at the bagel joint. Nah, Kruger just rolls with the whole thing. Even when taking the abuse in the airing of grievances, when Frank is yelling at him about, George has problems, but Kruger, you got to stop, riding him so hard and everything like that. That was all just phenomenal. So, yeah, everything with Kruger, everything at dinner is great. Do you wish that we got to see any of the defeats of strength?
Yes. Well, and I wish there was more of the airing of grievances too. We only really got the attack on George. You're telling me Frank doesn't want to air his grievances with George's mom, with Elaine? I mean, come on. I mean, he's got some grievances here with the Seinfelds, with Jerry's parents. They absolutely have some grievances there. They might just pack up and move to Florida just to spite him. And they've gotten that before. I think they have. So so I'd love to get more of that. But yeah, the feat of strength would have been incredible to see.
It just lots of little touches here that are great throughout the episode. Frank always calls Kruger by the wrong name. Calls Kroger a couple times, I believe, which is a well-known grocery store chain in parts of the country. That's great.
Well, Cougar, just straight up Cougar, which was hilarious to me. That was one of my things on my notes. Was just so funny to me that he just, Cougar's gonna see the pole. I mean, just unbelievable, dude. I love that part.
And also the little bit where Jerry tries to follow Gwen out and then comes right back in. He's like, "Ooh, bad lighting on the porch." It just at the end of the day, they all try to point out how superficial they are and everything, but that encapsulates just exactly how Jerry Seinfeld treats basically every woman he's in a relationship with on this show.
Yeah,
we laugh about it, but Jerry's not the best. Put it that way. He's like Myrtle Beach.
God, is Myrtle Beach not the best?
Pull a stunt like this again, you'll never make it back to Myrtle Beach.
I probably wasn't going to anyway. Turns out it's actually not the best.
Well, we've talked about this being a classic episode of Seinfeld, and it even appears on some top 10 lists that are out there. Over on IMDb, The Strike is rated 8.7 out of 10, tying it for the 22nd highest rated episode of Seinfeld overall. Pretty rare air there. Puts it roughly in the top 12% of Seinfeld episodes. What do you think, man? Too high, too low, just about right? Where are you at with it?
I hate to kind of do this, but I think it is right there in the Goldilocks zone. I don't think it could really be much lower than the top 15%, maybe right in the edge, sneaking just in the top 10%. So that would put it in the top 18 or something like that. You're right in that borderline. So I think, top 12% is probably just about right. How about you?
I'm going to agree here. When I looked at this, I said, okay, there's 9 seasons. There's a lot. They did 22 episodes a season roughly. But for me, I say this is a top 25 episode ever. So, they have it at 22nd, same thing. Its ceiling is maybe, top 10, 9%. Its floor is maybe top 15%. So I think this is kind of right in the sweet spot, give or take an inch or two here. But yeah, man, this is a really, really great episode of Seinfeld.
Yeah, it depends if you're measuring from the top or the base, but I think that's probably why it stuck on most of the top 10 episodes it did in that 7, 8, 9, 10 range. I never really saw it creep up into the top 5. So very good, but maybe a little bit of meat on the bone as we discussed earlier.
Yeah. Well, that's what's scary about it is as good as it was, it probably could have even have been better, which really blows your mind. When we cover TV episodes, we enjoy coming up with alternative titles for the episodes we cover. The Strike, it's pretty classic. It works. But I think there's some other options here, right, Mills? I mean, I definitely got a few. What do you think?
Oh, yeah. I mean, right off the top, just because I forgot about it, the Two-Face. Couldn't go wrong with that. Give me one.
I really like the fake number. I could picture the fake number being a thing here. Again, it's almost like pick your poison. Which storyline do you want to go from? I also like the Human Fund. I just thought that would be, if the name of the episode was the Human Fund, that would have been very funny, very intriguing, and I think it would have worked as well.
Yeah, I like that. How about the Atomic Subcard?
Oh,
you
yeah.
go with the free sub, but I think the Atomic Subcard is better. It just sounds cool. And one that really doesn't come back around, but which could have, is the kick-ass philanthropist.
Yeah,
That's what George would have been, right? He would have been the kick-ass
he would have been a kick-ass
philanthropist.
philanthropist.
I'm a full-on rapist, you know?
I'm sorry. Did you say you're a full-on rapist?
No. I help people. You know what I mean? I'm a
Philanthropist?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It gets blocked up in my mouth. I don't say it no good.
I'll give you one or two more here. An airing of grievances, I think, would have worked well. But then my personal favorite, the bubblegum bagel. Just that last scene where Kramer's back at work and he drops his bubblegum that he's chewing into the dough, and it just gets blended in. It's like, did he just create a new flavor? I don't know. But yeah, the bubblegum bagel.
I think that's pretty good. It's hard because they use you can't really do like the Festivus. I don't think really works. So
You could do Festivus for the rest of us.
they always do the. It's kind of like, sticking to their format. And
Yep.
I don't think Den of Vest was good enough. So maybe just go with the feats of strength, because that would certainly get me interested. Just be like, oh, the feats of strength.
It absolutely would have. Those are some good ones. Go ahead and let us know what you would do for an alternate title of this classic Seinfeld episode. Hit us up in the comments below. Drop us a note. Get in touch with us. Slide into our DMs, baby. We'll slide back. That brings us to the 6 Degrees of Lebowski. This is where we connect a featured review, whatever we're reviewing, to the Big Lebowski in 6 degrees or less. Mills, the mathematician, he will get there. I have a feeling. But can you get there in 6 degrees or less with one of our guest stars?
Well, to quote the Quad City DJs, I think I can. I did too easy. Our boy here, Daniel Von Bargen, who played Kruger in The Strike, also played Sheriff Cooley in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, where John Goodman played Big Dan Teague. And of course, John Goodman is Walter in The Big Lebowski. Try harder next time.
Wow, man. It always comes back to the Big Lebowski. I'll tell you one thing.
It's like the rug in the room, dude. Ties it all together.
The dude abides. It really does. Now we're each going to give our funniest moment of the strike. Mills, what cracked you up and made you literally LOL the most during this episode?
I think I just have to go with the whole bit from Kramer getting the call about the strike being over until he walks out of the apartment. Everything there is basically gold. It's too long to use as my quote, so every bit about that was funny. Everyone gets a couple of good lines in there. So give me Kramer officially, going back to work. How about yourself?
Love it. That's way up there. In the spirit of doing something different, because there's a bunch of good ones to choose from. I'm going to go with just the whole scene in Kruger's office where George gets caught red-handed, given the fake Christmas gift for the human fun card. And I love how he gets there at the end and blames Festivus. And one of my favorite lines is, drove my family right out of Bayside. Just a hilarious thing. And for people who aren't familiar with Brooklyn or New York City, maybe it's not as funny, but that was just a really, really, really funny thing for me. That whole scene just had me dying, dude, because it's just classic George. George was on top of the world, right? Giving out this fake gift, getting all these great gifts in return, and then he ends up getting called on it, and it just works out huge. And he blames his family, blames Festivus, which may be true to a certain degree. So, there's always a little bit of truth in every lie.
Wow, I always thought that was a Saved by the Bell reference, and they were doing a little bit of NBC corporate synergy.
What, drove my family out of Bayside?
That's where they went and Saved by the Bell, right? Bayside?
Different Bayside, but yes, they did.
I'm crushed now. Maybe that's where the bubblegum bagels went.
It might have been. That seems like a 90210 thing, doesn't it? Saved by the Bell thing. Get the new bubblegum bagel. That brings us to our favorite quote from the strike. I'll go first here, Mills. Bunch of good ones here, but I gotta go with Kramer being like,
your demands.
Yeah, $5.35 an hour, and that's what they're paying now.
I believe that's the new minimum wage.
And now you know who to thank for that.
I mean, he waited 12 years of inflation to get what he asked for 12 years ago. It's just so funny on so many different levels. And yeah, I gotta give that my quote.
I'll do something I almost never do and go with the absolute final exchange of the episode. This takes place over the beginning of the credits, and it's after everybody leaves. Obviously, it's feats of strength time, and you hear George talking to his parents, and his mom's like, "I think you could take him, Georgie." And George's pleading with his father, "Come on, be sensible." And Frank Costanza says, "Stop crying and fight your father."
I think you can take him, Georgie.
Hey, come on, be sensible.
Stop crying and fight your father.
Ow! Oh, I got
This is the best Festivus ever!
Frank telling George to stop crying and fight your father. Just, we know why George is the way he is.
Yes, one of George's parents give you a good reason regularly why George is who he is. But that is
Elaine even comments on that when she talks, hears about Frank inventing a holiday. She's like, "Oh, yep," and another puzzle piece falls into place or whatever.
Yeah, another piece of the puzzle here. All right, my man. Yada yada yada. We each need to give our episode MVP for the strike. It can be any character in the episode, whoever you want. Doesn't even have to be the big four. But no, I will not allow you picking the aluminum pole. That's not the MVP we're looking for. It's not in the spirit of what we want to do, but you can honorable mention the aluminum pole. I'll allow that.
Are you trying to Chris Rock me here and telling me my only goal is to keep me off the pole? That's fine.
Yes.
It is what it is. Honestly, I think this is
Mills. One last thing, cornbread. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I got it from Michael Jackson and them. Anyways, I think this is probably about a three-way race here. You got Kramer, you got George, and you have Frank. Frank probably doesn't get enough screen time, but he threatens to steal it. And George kind of gets some scenes stolen by Kruger, who is low-key, kind of my like low-key MVP. I've got to give it to Kramer, though, because he's all over all of the plot lines. He's the one who brings them together, basically. He inspires Frank to bring Festivus back. So I got to go with Kramer. It feels like eating the chalk a little bit, but it's Kramer, dude. What are you going to do? How about yourself? MVP.
He's the Kramer. Yeah. It's Kramer, but in the spirit of going somewhere else, I'll give it to George. He's worthy too. George crushes this episode, dude. He's hot and he's on fire. Virtually every scene he's in, he kills. And a lot of it revolves around him as well. And he finds his way into kind of, wrapping around the whole universe here with the Human Fund, and he's involved in the Two-Face bit with Jerry, and he's in on, and everybody's in on his Festivus thing. And so I got to go with my boy George. He crushes, man. Just another great George episode.
Like I said, he was right up there with me, but just shout out Frank and Kruger. Both absolutely slay here.
Yes. And don't forget about don't forget about our boy Bryan Cranston too.
That was one minor complaint. I always thought Watney was going to come back around somehow. That they teased him so much at the early part of the episode. That's one of my minor complaints. A little quibble. I really thought that we were going to get Watney to come back to Festivus at the end somehow. I thought it was going to really come all the way around.
I love it. He's like, I'm pulling a Watley. It's just like that's George's way of getting even. For getting screwed out of that Christmas gift. He's going to screw everybody else. Just classic.
So you think you're sponge-worthy?
Yes, I think I'm sponge-worthy. I think I'm very sponge-worthy.
You're nuts with these sponges.
Run down your case for me again.
She said I wasn't sponge-worthy. Wouldn't waste a sponge on me.
Well, we literally stole sponge-worthiness from Seinfeld, so it's only fitting that we see if we can spare some sponges for the strike. Mills, I think I know what you're going to do here, but go ahead and tell everybody what you're going to do.
It's probably no surprise, so let me try to make it interesting. I'll paraphrase Sublime. I'll use 2 sponges in the morning. I'll use 2 sponges at night. I'll use 2 sponges in the afternoon because it makes me feel all right. So yeah, I think I'm sparing a goddamn sponge for the strike. How about yourself? I'm assuming.
2 in peace and 2 in war. 2 sponges before you use 2 sponges.
Use 2 sponges. That'll use
2 more. Yeah, shout out Sublime, and shout out the strike. It's absolutely sponge-worthiness. I'm going to spare the sponge for that one. With sponges settled here, it's time for us to give a grade to the strike. Mills, on a scale of 1 to 10 Festivus polls, how many are you giving to this episode? Is it truly a Festivus for all 10 of us, or 9 of us, or how many of us?
Enough of us, I think. I will say 9.2 polls. You are keeping most of the the ladies of the exotic arts employed or whatever, or just the the flagpole makers. I don't know who is the aluminum pole, just a flagpole. Is it a stripper pole without gold paint? I don't know. That's not for us to decide. We're just here to decide the grade. So 9.2 Festivus poles from me to the strike. Jamie G, show me what you like.
Dude, I literally had 9.2 written on my paper. So I'm going to go ahead and say 9.3 Festivus polls. I've got to one up the boy Magnum Mills. We'll go 9.3 Festivus polls here. It's a great episode. The complaints are really that you just want more. It's hard for me to nitpick this one. I think it's a phenomenal episode. People forget just how great this show was when it decided to go off air. This is the last season, season 9, and it was almost operating at an all-time high when it decides to go off, and it's because of episodes like this. This is just a fantastic episode and a really great season, which is season 9.
Yeah, I mean, if we would have waited till season 10, then the dragons would have finally showed up and everything. But I guess we'll have to live with this.
There was an interview with Jerry Seinfeld where someone was like, I heard that they offered you $130 million, which what year was this, Mills? 96?
That's late 90 money, so you could basically double it pretty easily.
It mid to late 90s money here, and he was like, wait, how much did they say? And he's like 140, 130 million. He's like, oh, I could have gotten more than that. Without a beat, Jerry was like, I could have gotten more than that. And you got to respect that. I mean, they almost Barry Sanders here in a little bit, right? Except they won, championship after championship. In terms of going out at their peak. It's just a remarkable thing. Anything else you want to say about the strike, particularly before we head out of here?
Yeah, just commenting on your last point, I feel like NBC offered Ted Danson $20 million an episode to do another season of Cheers. So that would have been a shit ton back then, 22 episodes. So you were already in the 40 million. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure Jerry could have gotten a chunk of change here. In one reason that this episode sticks out a little bit, and it's really unfortunate, it's the first time it aired, its original air date was the night that Chris Farley died. Really random, but that's out of one reason. I back in the day I used to watch the Seinfeld live, and I can kind of remember like flipping over to MTV or whatever or something, and it's like, oh, dude, Chris Farley's died. Like, damn, dude.
Still sad. We missed so much of what Chris Farley could have given us. This isn't a Chris Farley appreciation podcast, although we do appreciate Chris Farley and we wish we got more of him. But this is a Seinfeld specific episode. So for me, I just want to say I really enjoyed it. It was fun going back and rewatching this and bringing it to life again and talking about it right here on Regular Dudes Watch Stuff. Just being a couple of regular dudes watching stuff and breaking it down right here. Let us know what you think of the strike. And if you got anything else you want us to do, hit us up. We greatly appreciate you checking out Regular Dudes Watch Stuff. Any additional thoughts, let us know in the comments. Hit us up on our social media. And we all, from our families to yours, hope you have a great Festivus, just like the rest of us. Happy holidays, y'all.
Very well said. I'll just remind you that you can find Regular Dudes Watch Stuff wherever your podcasts and on YouTube and on social media at Dudes Watch Stuff. Again, do not forget to get that holiday shopping done early. You do not want to be late, and don't make those Amazon drivers have to kill themselves when you order stuff on the 23rd. Like Arnold said, do it now. Don't forget the flaps while you're at it. Follow, like, and please subscribe. It's all we ask, helps other people find our channel, find our show. It's all we want for Festivus. So if you can do that, help us out a little bit. Just give us that thumb. We hope you had fun. I'm Magnum Mills. He's Jamie G. And we're going to be back next time to cover something. I'm not quite sure yet. Depends if we can get the soup deucer in the house, but we're just teasing this time. Usually you know what we're doing next. This time you don't. It's going to be a fun one.
Thanks again for checking out Regular Dudes Watch Stuff. If you're a regular dude or just a regular person or you're just a regular something, join us as we check out something on an episode someday in the future. We'll see you then.